I petitioned the doctors to get completely taken off all pain medication because I knew my body was destroyed and I wanted my brain to be sharp.
Welcome back to the show. My name is Remington Ramsey, and today we have Arnold Desena. Is it Desena, Arnold?
You got it.
Out of the Columbus market. Arnold has a pretty fascinating story that actually includes real producers. We were going to feature you. You've been in the industry for 20 years, a rock star in that time. And we're going to be featured in the magazine in 2018, 2019 area. Had the story written, and you had a life-changing accident that happened while you're riding your motorcycle that quite literally changed the story. And today we're going to dig into that. I want to give away the ending a little bit. We have this year, since that time, now featured you as still a realtor with a very different tale than just a few years ago. So first off, Arnold, thanks for being on the show and thanks for being willing to share your story.
Absolutely, Remington. I'm happy I'm here. Thanks for having me.
And you just got to have lunch with my buddy Bobby, reliving old war stories, and I'm excited. I'm excited for this podcast. So let's start at the beginning. And you've been in real estate a long time, and I imagine for how recent the accident was back in 2019, only being 4 years, that dominates a lot of your thoughts and in your story. But before that, you were a successful realtor for a real long time. So how'd you get into the industry?
Oh, getting into real estate back in 2003. 2002, my wife and I were still living in Connecticut. And I was a union pipe fitter building casinos, hotels, hospitals, things like that. My wife was in retail and got recruited out here to the Columbus market for a role in the industry that was a career changer. So I decided to follow her out to Columbus and be a supporting spouse in her career. And when we got out here, we were looking at houses, and I realized my realtor was pretty damn good, but she was missing a lot of key points about properties that my construction background would pick up on. So I decided to retire from construction and realized I could do the same thing and use my strengths as a contractor to help clients. And I switched careers on a dime right then and there. And
wow,
that started it all for us.
Well, and I asked you in the pre-show what your best year ever was, and it was 2018, which would have been right before the accident. Can you walk us through what was going on leading up to that time? I mean, you're just crushing it in real estate, and then life drops a bomb on you. So tell us about that.
2018 was going very well. My oldest daughter was out of college. My youngest was starting college. And I was starting to use a lot of video back then. I had quite a database going for me. So referral business was really, after 15, 17 years kicking in, making the job even easier. Like I logged in all those years and it was finally just paying me back instead of grinding as much. Was working as a solo agent at that time, was in management prior, had a team prior, was just flying solo and loving how my career was going. We rolled into 2019. The first 3 months I had an amazing start with business and closings. And first week of April, I had a day where I had a closing. I had 2 more lined up that week. Went for a motorcycle ride just to kind of unwind on a Tuesday. And I had a distracted driver driving toward me in her Mercedes-Benz, dropped an apple while she was driving her car. And when she looked down to pick it up, she realized she was going to rear end the car in front of her. So she just jerked the car hard left to try to avoid that. And I was right there with my motorcycle. So she hit me head on at 35 miles an hour, ejected me off the motorcycle. I flew for about 30 feet before I landed on my head, broke my neck in 3 places, amongst other things. So that day was started off as a great day, and it turned out to be the probably the worst day of my life up to that point. Took me right out.
So you were rushed to the hospital. What was that like? I know you're married. What was it like for your wife? What happened next?
Well, my wife and I had two different experiences. I was in the back of the meat wagon with the EMTs, and they were rushing me to a trauma hospital here in Columbus. At the time, my wife knew I was out on the motorcycle and was kind of keeping track of me through the Find Friends app.
Yeah.
And she knew by seeing the direction I was traveling that something was wrong because I was actually heading into the city from the suburbs, which at that time of day I would not be doing.
Yeah.
Traffic. So I got to the hospital. She was trying to call me to find out, well, where are you? What are you doing? Because she noticed I had stopped at Grant Trauma Hospital. So she knew there was a problem. And then a couple hours later, she got a call from the priest at the hospital telling her, your husband's pretty messed up. You better get down there. But it took a couple hours before they could find her.
Man.
So she got to watch it on the Find Friends app. So she kind of knew something was wrong.
Yeah, that's a scary realization, just kind of piecing it together, not knowing what's going on. And you're unconscious at this time or in surgery?
No. So I never lost consciousness.
Oh, wow.
I remember being hit. I remember the look of the woman's face through her windshield. I remember flying through the air. The only thing I don't remember is actually landing. But when I hit the ground, I was wide awake and screaming for help. So I rode in the ambulance, talking to the EMTs every step of the way because at that point, adrenaline's just kicking in.
Yeah.
I kept asking them how the other person was. I was worried for that woman who hit me. And actually, while I was laying on the ground, I was asking them to go check on her. I was more worried about her than myself. And it turns out she was fine. She was shooken up. But yeah, I got to the hospital and they started prepping me for surgery when my wife showed up. And then I went in for what was the first of 9 surgeries that week.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, rough day. Started great, ended terribly.
I've heard you speak briefly on another podcast that you were on, and the podcast quickly turned to perseverance. But the road, I mean, you seem to have come full circle, and you have a very positive outlook now. But I imagine it wasn't always that way. The very early stages of being paralyzed. How did you find out? What were those conversations like? What were they like with your wife?
So before I dive there, I have to go back in talking about this woman. And this is important because it'll explain my positive mindset. While I was lying on the ground waiting for the EMTs, I knew I had to forgive this woman for what had happened. And while I was still waiting for help, I was already telling myself to let it go. So in being able to forgive the woman while I'm still waiting for an EMT, that kind of shaped how I was moving forward.
Is this something you've always, I mean, have you always been that way, or did it literally shake it out of you in that moment?
No. I say this all the time. I was a nice guy, but not that nice. Harley riders we're a strange bunch. We don't like anyone touching our motorcycles. Don't sit on it. Don't look at it too long.
Yeah.
Because we get very defensive. And here I am lying on the ground looking at my motorcycle that's totaled.
Yeah.
And I'm not even worried about me. I'm worried about her. That level of being nice is not part of my DNA. I spent 20 years as a commercial construction worker, so we're kind of callous people. I say it all the time. In that moment, I felt it was the divine hand of God touching me and saying, "Hey, pal, let go of this because you don't need to live with this anger." And I didn't. So it made it from there.
Did you know how bad it was in that moment?
No, no, I didn't. I was asking someone to drag me to the curb because I was afraid I was going to get hit, and I was trying. I thought I was trying to move myself, but my arms weren't working because they were both broken. My neck was broken in 3 spots, my back in 2, my pelvic in 9 places. Um, I thought I was trying to push myself to the side of the road, and some guy was standing over me, and he said, "Don't move." I said, "Please drag me out of the street so I don't get hit." And he said, "No, no one's moving, and you're not moving either."
Wow.
So I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew it was terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pain in parts of my body, and then the rest I couldn't feel. So it was pretty scary at the moment.
Well, you said before you were a nice guy, but not that nice. But you felt the divine hand of God in that moment. You knew something was that bad. You get rushed to the hospital. Your wife finally joins you. At what point did you know how bad it was?
Oh gosh, not probably till the next day.
Yeah.
We, my wife was the one that told me I was paralyzed from the chest down. I didn't know it. I mean, I had casts on everything, so it was hard for me to figure out what was going on.
Mm.
But she was the one. She said to me, "You need to know this." Um, Not in the exact words, but she pretty much said, "You're never going to walk again." And foolish me, I guess from the anesthesia that was still floating around in my body, I asked her, "Well, when are they coming in to amputate my legs?"
Mm.
Which was, I don't know why I thought. She said, "Why are they going to amputate your legs?" I said, "Well, if they don't work, why do I need them?" I didn't realize. I was still high from propofol and fentanyl. You know. But she was the one that let me know.
Yeah.
And it was,
I imagine that was pretty hard on her.
yeah, it's all been hard on her.
Yeah.
I spent over 8 months laying in a hospital bed, and my wife was by my side probably 16, 18 hours every day, easily. And now she's with me 24/7. She actually got her real estate license so my career could continue. She gave up her career this time for me.
Wow.
So, yeah.
A lot of sacrifice. So
pretty cool lady.
it's times like this within the podcast when it gets pretty heavy that I like to let it stew so people understand how bad it really was. But the truth of the matter is there is a happy ending where you currently state. I mean, you are still in real estate, still slinging houses, and you're still and now you're a little bit more active than, bedridden for 8 months. What did your progress of both physical and mental health look like?
What does it look like now?
What did it look like to get to where you're at now?
So they told my wife and my daughters that the best Arnold will ever do is turn his head left and right.
Wow.
If he's lucky, he may shrug his shoulders, but that's a long shot.
Mm.
I can tell you that 2 years ago, I went, besides physical therapy, 5 days a week, which was intense pain, and occupational therapy, all pain. There's no sugarcoating that. 2 years ago, I joined a gym, hired a personal trainer. I do cardio. I do free weights. I'm on pull down machines, and I work out twice a week with a trainer.
Awesome.
The arms that they said I would never use fly around like crazy because I'm Italian, so we talk with our hands. So I'm in the gym quite a bit. My wife comes with me every day we go. Everything the doctors told me I would not do, pretty much doing all of it. I regained some muscles in my core so I could bend forward and lean back. But they had me as just sitting in a chair for the rest of my life, and I'm out there making things happen.
Yeah. Well, it's truly an inspiration. And you said your wife quit what she was doing to help you. What does that dynamic look like now within your business and your personal lives?
So she's sitting right next to me, so I have to
So if we want the true story, you need to turn the camera a little bit.
No, you know what? I have an amazing wife, and I say this all the time because most people in my position wind up divorced because the spouse can't handle the severity of the problem.
Wow.
Um, I mean, I'm a 3 hour project in the morning just to get me out of bed, into the bathroom, into the shower, and dressed. It takes two people to move me around before I'm in the kitchen having a cup of coffee. It's a terrible thing. I can't dress myself. I can't wash myself. I can't do any of that stuff. She gave up her career in retail to be my permanent full time caregiver.
Yeah.
So she goes from being my best friend and my wife to being my full time nurse. Um, so for her, it's a major sacrifice that most spouses within the first year or two just walk away from the injured family member. We laugh a lot, we joke a lot, we have a lot of fun. We keep life pretty well balanced with activities and going out. And we went kayaking this weekend. Can you imagine a quadriplegic going kayaking? This guy does it. So I'm trying to live life immersed in my old world. I don't necessarily try to live in the handicap world, even though that's completely what I am.
Yeah.
I want to embrace what I think I can do, and not just hang out with a bunch of other people that have severe limitations. I'm not trying to say I'm not handicapped, but I'd rather hang out with everybody else doing the things I used to do. And
Yeah.
because of that, I'm not allowed to be handicapped with anybody because no one's going to put up with that with me. They won't let me pull the handicap card. I get no slack cut at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. And you don't want it.
I don't want it. I don't want the pity. I got some of my friends make more fun of me now than they ever did.
You've got a great spirit about you, Arnold. What did it get to the point? I mean, 8 months in the bed is just brutal. But since then, you've done a lot of work, both exercise wise and spiritually, mentally, and all those things. Emotionally, I'm curious how dark it got emotionally, and what you do during those times where you feel like, man, this is pretty bad. I'm not sure where to go from here. Because and the reason I ask is because a lot of times what I've found out, I mean, we're all in real estate. I mean, everyone who listens to this is in real estate. And a theme of the show has been it could be way worse. What truly, I mean, for most of us, a bad day is, no one picked up the phone when I called them, and I had someone said something mean to me across the table, and that's the bad day.
Yeah.
None of us, for the most part, have experienced a day like you had, but then the days that followed to recover from that, walk us through what that looks like and how you came out on the other side.
So it's a long answer for that. So let's start with the fact that right after my first surgery, I asked my wife to find out what medications they had me on. I was adamant about not being put on Oxy, which 4.5 years ago, Oxy was a major, major problem in this country. It's still
Right.
is. But they were giving out Oxy like Pez candy here in Ohio, and they put me on it after the first of 9 surgeries. And I petitioned the doctors to get completely taken off all pain medication because I knew my body was destroyed and I wanted my brain to be sharp. So I had to refuse pain meds every day while I was in tremendous pain. So that starts to shape the mindset moving forward. In order for me to be sharp, I had to stay off that kind of pill. And from there, to cope with the pain, I had to find other ways to deal with it. Tylenol and coffee is my standard line. Give me 2 Tylenol, a cup of coffee, and get the hell away from me. Um, but we had to bring in the use of visualization and meditation. And I would stare. I'm an amateur photographer, and I've got a couple of pieces of photography that I'm pretty proud of. So we printed one of them up and put them up on the wall in the hospital. Every hospital I was in 5 different hospitals. And for 3 hours every day when the pain was bad, my wife would take the picture off the wall, sit on the bed with me, and we would go through every step of the way that I went to take that photograph. So it was out in the woods after a snowstorm. So it starts with the sound of my boots crunching in the snow, the sound of my winter gear, nylon jacket rubbing, the swooshing sound, kneeling down, my breath, the smell of the air, visualizing every step until I fired off that shutter. And I would do that repeatedly for 3 hours.
Wow.
And when the pain was at its peak, I'd lay there doing that over and over. And she would ask me the same question 100 times, and I would recall it. And then after about 2 or 3 hours, I'd be past that wave of pain, and then I could move on with my day.
Mm.
So we started there. Laying in the hospital bed, I died 3 times. I flatlined where I had respiratory failure. My lungs were filling with fluid and I was drowning, and they couldn't drain the fluid fast enough, and I would tap out. First time was 4.5 minutes. Second time was 3.5 minutes. And the third time, I think, was a minute, minute and a half. Each time I died, they brought me back. But then after we got that junk under control, then my intestines ruptured. There was a weak spot from the accident, and it blew out. And they couldn't keep blood in me, so I bled out one day, and they finally got that patched up. So there was a lot I was dealing with physically. And emotionally, you start to think, there's no way I'm going to beat this, because every time I get better,
something else happens.
I die. And that's a big thing to overcome. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend you go down that path. But what ended up happening was I was trying to manage all that without the oxy. And it got to where it just became too difficult. And one day I got my patient advocate in the room and told her I couldn't do it anymore. And I didn't want the medication, but I didn't want the pain. And I asked them I was living on a ventilator at the time for several months. And I just asked if I could just be let go, just let me expire. So we called my best friend, who happened to be my attorney. He came in, we sat with them and talked. And it was agreed that they were going to pull the plug on me because I couldn't do it anymore. Mm. And I mean, I look back now and I think what a knucklehead I was. I'd rather die than go on pills, but that's how strongly I was against it.
Yeah.
And as I was having that conversation, my wife was coming into the hospital to visit me. So I didn't want her to know I was weak. And I asked them to stop the conversation and give me some more time. But they were ready to unplug me right then and there. So that's how dark things got. But after she showed up, I realized that that was me being a coward. And I had 2 young daughters, young women, the daughters. And I knew if I let go, their lives would be destroyed. My wife's life would be destroyed. So after a couple of days, they sent me a priest, a minister, you name it, every psychiatrist they had in the hospital to understand, why does this man want to go? Why won't he just take pills?
Yeah.
And it was in those couple of days where I really had to reach down into my soul and just say, enough of this pity party. You have a lot to live for. So screw all that nonsense and let's fight.
Yeah.
And we took the fight to the next level. And I'm glad I did, because I got to watch my second daughter graduate college.
Wow.
My oldest daughter get married. I've been able to visit with my parents again. So
Yeah.
um, I just had to go. I was in a place where it got so dark I would have rather died than exist.
Yeah.
And then I leaned on my faith to get me through it. I knew I wasn't getting out of there anytime quickly, and I knew I may not even live to get out of there. We already had it 4 times where I was gone. 3 times completely counted out. The fourth time they almost lost me. Um, so it got pretty ugly. There was a lot of pain, a lot of crying, a lot of praying, a lot of crying. And then one day, poof, 8 months, 3 days later, I'm going home. So it worked. It worked.
Incredible story of perseverance and resilience. And I'm curious on the back half of all this, your mission. I mean, you're selling real estate again. You're back out of, you're exercising, you're living the most normal life that you possibly could live, and still improving on things every single day. Are you an advocate against or for anything post this experience? You hear a lot of people talk about, I mean, just even we'll start at the beginning with motorcycles or distracted driving, or you've talked about this lady a few times. I'm sure that guilt that she has is pretty tremendous. Have you ever had a chance to confront her?
So there was a deposition. Um, we had to go to court with her to get her to help pony up some money to pay for my bills. And because of that, I was never allowed to talk to her.
Mm,
However, we did. She went into court. I could not physically go. I was on camera watching, and they called her in, and she was looking around looking for me. And they told her, no, he's at home. He can't travel, but he's watching on video. So she walked up to the camera and started apologizing to me. And I was not on a microphone, so she could not hear me. My attorney was in the room, and I started texting him, tell her I forgave her the moment it happened, that I love her. I wish her the best. I know she didn't want to do this, and that I pray for her every day. And
wow.
I do, because she had to witness that. She watched me screaming on the ground. Her life is ruined from this. Not to the degree mine is, but she didn't need me um, giving her a hard time. Legally, I wasn't allowed to talk to her, but when my attorney showed her the text message, she broke down crying and had to leave the courtroom for quite an extended period of time to
Yeah,
get her composure back.
I bet I would
Um,
too.
yeah, I feel sorry for her. I mean, I feel worse for me, but you what am I going to do? Be angry? This life's too short. Mine almost ended in the amount of time it took for someone to pick up an apple off the floor. So why, why be bitter? Now I have my days.
Yeah,
At moments. I mean,
you're human.
there's not a day that goes by that there's not tears shed. There's
Yeah.
tears shed every day. Fortunately, I have a wife with a great sense of humor, and she's tough, and she won't let me back down. And so we laugh. She gives me a hard time in a fun, loving way, and I give it back, and we just move on. God didn't put me here to be a miserable bastard. He put me here to do some good, and that's what we're working on.
Your story is extraordinary. And we talked on the pre-show about who listens to this. We've got realtors, top realtors, and maybe even new realtors that get into this game this year. And what's funny is this year has been a pretty tough year in real estate for the U.S. With interest rates and whatever the reason might be. Um, but then we do an interview like this, and we talked very little about real estate, but we do know that you're thriving in life and in real estate, even post what crazy an event took place when we were about to feature you back in 2019. So,
Mhm.
with the last few minutes we have here, I'm just curious what your message to that realtor who's having a quote unquote bad day. Um, and I don't want to diminish it. Some of us really do have bad days, and it's tough. What's your message to them?
So the message, I'll tell you what, is the same before the accident as it is today. Our business has ups and downs, and this is a difficult business. If you forget about the money, which is why we're all here, um, if you stop focusing on the money and you focus on the client, you'll have a life filled with abundance. The client doesn't care what you know until they know how much you care. And once they know how much you care, they're your client for the rest of your life, and they will bring you money and business and referrals beyond anything you would have imagined. So my focus is focus on the client, not you or your situation, and you'll be gifted with quite the abundance of transactions. Now, I focus on people even more now. I have this silly little Instagram page called Portraits on Polaroid, and I take pictures of people in my life, and I tell a quick little story about them. But I ask them a question, and the question is, when I say the word home, what comes to mind? And for everybody, it's different. A couple of years ago, we were going through the beginning of a terrible thing in this country called cancel culture. And everybody was fighting with everybody about any silly little comment on Instagram or Facebook. So I decided that I was tired of all that crap, and I like social media. So I decided to put something out there that was just nice. So I would take your portrait, take a picture, you tell me what you think home means to you. And then at some point I would post it up on my page, and I would tell a quick little blurb about what home means to Remington. And it doesn't get a lot of love. I'm not there for 1 million likes. I'm there just to do something I enjoy. I'm doing it for me.
Yeah.
But I'm putting a lot of love on the people that allowed me to take their picture. And, I don't get as many likes as you would think, but I get a lot of phone calls of people telling me what a great story that was. And a lot of people call me up to ask me, can I be a part of this project?
Wow.
So it's been a cool thing. I actually got Bobby Wright today. I got his photograph.
So portraits on Polaroid. We can find that online.
Yeah. Yep. It's a real simple little, it's just an old dad taking pictures of people, and makes my daughters cringe, but it's
Arnold,
okay.
you are an inspiration, and your wife is an inspiration. And we are blessed to have you sharing your story, and thank you for inspiring us through your hardships.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's been the Real Producers Podcast, guys. We will see you next time.